Hello, welcome, and thanks for watching. I'm an artificially intelligent version of Stan Higgins, founder and owner of VersaPile. VersaPile is a helical pile contracting company which has offered the First Foundations collaboration for a decade. First Foundations is a unique approach only offered by VersaPile to Indigenous communities. This is a picture of the real Stan Higgins, who came to start and build a helical pile company in the oddest but coolest of ways. Stan always showed signs of being entrepreneurial. When he was 5 years old, he went door to door selling cowboy lessons in a small French town outside of Ottawa. Shortly after high school, he got a job at Maui working in a group home for Indigenous teen moms. Then he worked in the Youth and Cultural Programs Department, which he eventually managed. They had hundreds of Indigenous youth each week participating in programs such as sweat lodge ceremonies, powwow wow club, sports of all sorts, camps, and more. At the same time, Stan's mom, Brenda LaRose, was building her executive search business, which specialized entirely on Indigenous executive search. She asked Stan to join, and he joined her to work on many exciting searches. They placed Murray Sinclair, Wilton Littlechild, and Marie Wilson at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They placed Indigenous executives at IBM, Rio Tinto, Royal Bank, Sodexo, and other large businesses. But the thing Stan really loved to work on was executive placements for Indigenous economic development corporations. Stan had the opportunity to visit many First Nations across Canada and sat with boards and councils who consistently said they were open for business as long as it was good business done in a good way. In 2011, Stan was visiting Sandy, his now wife, who is Ojibwe and Cree from northern Manitoba. She was policing with the RCMP in Matthias Column First Nation, and Stan was researching businesses he could start. Stan saw an ad for a helical pile dealership. Not knowing what a helical pile was, he went to Google and learned the blade is installed in good soil below the soil that moves, and that way everything built on top doesn't move. Looking out the window, he realized that the house across from Sandy's trailer, which didn't have a front door, had a foundation issue. Helical piles were indeed needed. In Matthias Kalam and many other First Nations, especially in Canada's north, there are issues with doors. Sometimes the issues are major and the doors are missing, but more commonly there are big gaps, or the doors get seriously jammed and have to be shaved down. This almost always means inefficient heating and cooling and discomfort, but it often also means a collision of warm and cool air that creates condensation and that manifests into mold and premature deterioration. In some extreme examples of poor foundations, there is so much stress on the frame of the home that it results in cracks and gaps which can cause major issues. In just about every situation when a house moves, it's not good. I even realized that some of the health and safety issues which are related to the poor state of Indigenous housing. If houses had deep foundations and weren't moving, that would mean doors and windows would function as intended. We would eliminate many mold infestations and avoid the horrible health impacts of living in a mold-infested home. With windows and doors that open, inhabitants could more easily evacuate a home in the event of a fire, which would reduce the crazy statistic of First Nations on reserve dying in house fires at a rate 10 times higher than the national average. So now we can see the need for and the benefits of a deep foundation versus a shallow foundation. So why are helical piles better than traditional concrete piles? I believe they are a far better option and will review some of the key benefits helical piles offer. The first is trusted performance. Helical piles were first invented to support lighthouses in the ocean, so they are great in challenging soils. The large blade or blades on the bottom of the pile shaft create a ton of resistance, much more than any force on the pile shaft. So if they get below frost, they are much better than any other pile at resisting frost heave. Another reason is they are far easier to transport. They are much lighter than concrete, they take up way less space, and they can be stored outside for decades and still be useful. That means no more bags of cement mix that are ruined and nearly impossible to dispose of. Another big reason is they are more sustainable and eco-friendly. They can be removed as easily as they are installed. You can reuse them or recycle them. They also have a much lower carbon footprint, often reducing the carbon emissions of foundation piles by 90%. Helical piles are also versatile. If you are in a loose soil layer, you will know it because your torque will be low. All you need to do is bolt on an extension and drive deeper into dense soil. If you are having a tough time going through dense soil, you can also trim down the helical, reduce the surface area, and drive the pile deeper. They are also very efficiently installed. A typical helical pile is installed in 10 to 20 minutes using nimble equipment like a skid steer or excavator, which most First Nations already own. They don't require any heating or hoarding or curing at all. You can build on them immediately, which saves time. Further, there are many pile caps you can choose from, and most of them have adjustability. This means it is easy to get the pile caps perfectly level, and this makes it faster and easier to build. It's very rare a helical pile has a performance issue, but in a rare case, you can adjust the pile cap to get things back to level. Note, it's about 1 in 5,000 helical piles that experience issues. So, for all these reasons, helical piles are becoming much more popular across the world, but also as a first choice foundation option for many Indigenous communities. We are not the only company installing helical piles for First Nations, but we are one of the first and most experienced, installing thousands of helical piles for hundreds of Indigenous infrastructure projects. Back in my days of executive search, I worked with communities who were quite fortunate to have major economic opportunities related to their geographic location. Other communities had to be much more inventive to create economic opportunities. One opportunity, however, that every single community had was to be more involved hands-on building and maintaining the infrastructure in the community. VersaPile will always go above and beyond for Indigenous customers, providing a great service at a fair price, doing what we say we will do, and going out of our way to earn repeat business. However, we really love to help Indigenous communities gain the training, support, and equipment necessary to install their own helical piles. When we are hired for a turnkey installation only, there is little money that stays in the community. However, a community with local installers foster employment and that stimulates local economy. Another advantage is to gain more control over the construction timeline. With a third party, there is added complexity. You will need to work within the availability of the contractor. If your community is winter road accessible only, that means getting all work completed in the winter months and working in an often very narrow and unpredictable window of opportunity. With a local install team, you can simply bring materials up on a winter road and then do the pile installation when it's ideal and when you feel it makes sense. No more rushing to clear lots in the freezing cold and struggling with equipment breakdowns due to extreme cold weather. Local installation teams also save big money by eliminating many non-value added expenses related to bringing in third-party contractors. Local teams don't have to mobilize from a long distance, often on roads that add wear and tear to trucks and trailers. They have local resources for equipment maintenance and can operate only when the weather is ideal to avoid unnecessary breakdowns. They don't have to pay workers' accommodations or out-of-town per diems. Nor do they need the extra insurance to traverse winter roads. We have seen the savings be as much as 70%, and they are often 33% or more. There is also a good chance we can train, support, and get the necessary implements and tools to equip a local install team using the construction budget that is already in place. This usually means combining a few projects. For example, we might combine the foundation budgets for a few homes and band office. However, if the upfront investment is not in the construction budget, there are often grants communities can access for training and development that cover all the costs, including some initial pile stock, which can greatly subsidize construction budgets. Note that the grants aren't always open, so we will need to work proactively to be ready to make an application when they are open. Our approach is always one of co-creation. We will meet the community where they are at. We will work to learn more about the people being trained, their relevant knowledge and expertise, and to identify which equipment in the community is best suited for installing helical piles. We then create plans to fill the gaps over time at a pace that makes sense. Usually we are starting with experienced trainees, meaning they have a fundamental understanding of construction and have experience operating equipment. In this situation, training can usually happen over the course of a week, and we will usually just need to send a single helical pile expert to provide the training. After the week, the trainees generally have the skills and basic knowledge to become VersaPile approved installers. Sometimes, however, the people being trained don't have much of a construction or equipment operating background. In this situation, we may need to have more than one VersaPile representative on site and will generally require a couple of weeks before the local install team is VersaPile approved. Once VersaPile approved, an installer has demonstrated they are capable of installing helical pile effectively and no longer require a VersaPile representative on site. Know, however, that VersaPile is still available by phone or email to help out, and we will always work to help engineer and procure the right piles for any project and ensure the installer's piling reports indicate that the installation will work for the project and to obtain an engineer stamped closeout letter. Every training plan is going to start off with an in-class session so that participants understand how helical piles work and what's necessary to install them properly. We cover the history of helical piles, the basics of engineering helical piles. No, you won't need an engineering degree to grasp the engineering concepts, and we aren't training anyone to design piles. We go over the safe work procedures for the equipment and tools as well as installation process itself, so everyone knows how to do this work safely. We will learn to lay out foundations and mark piles, the process for installing helical piles properly and in accordance with global best practices, how to accurately record installations and complete piling reports, as well as troubleshooting common challenges, like what do you do when you hit a rock? The bigger portion of the training is the hands-on portion. This is where we get out in the field with equipment, tools, and piles and go over the entire process, including laying out a foundation and marking piles, preparing for an install, safe operation of equipment and tools, installing of helical piles, uninstalling them, cutting them to elevation and installing pile caps, completing pile reports and how to perform soils probing to prepare for future potential projects and gather soils data. Before our trainer leaves, the local team will complete and pass an installer test which is both written and observed. Now with a team of approved local installers, we shift away from VersaPile having a representative on site towards VersaPile, providing ongoing support by phone, email, or on a virtual meeting platform. The local team will have all the training and equipment necessary to confidently install helical pile properly. They might not be the most efficient at this point, but that is something that is built with time and experience. The team of VersaPile-approved local installers will be capable and equipped to tackle many projects typically required in Indigenous communities such as houses, mini homes, band offices, elders' residences, childcare facilities, hotels or motels, strip malls, community centers, docks, and much more. It's also possible that the VersaPile-approved local install team will be able to tackle all of or most of or part of the work required to install helical piles for major projects. Major projects are happening more and more these days with helical piles. Helical piles are preferred foundations for many transmission lines, solar farms, battery energy storage systems, wind farms, oil and gas infrastructure, mine camps and infrastructure, or even for schools, hospitals, or other larger buildings. VersaPile is regularly completing major projects and are in need of additional installers and equipment. Definitely expect we will be calling to see if your local team of VersaPile approved installers have an appetite to join us on major projects. What our goal is in all situations is to be your piling ally, a company you can trust and rely on to do good work in a good way. It might make sense to start off with something informal where we just work collaboratively to tackle one project or many projects. It could make sense to team up on a major project with a formal joint venture, or also known as a special project vehicle where we share resources and profits. Or maybe it makes sense to spark a new company and team up more permanently and build a great enduring company that does good work in a good way for many years to come. Whichever approach makes sense, we are eager to explore the options and synergies together. This concludes our presentation. We hope you found it helpful in understanding more about helical piles, about VersaPile, and how we might be able to work together to foster employment and build local economy while providing lasting support for homes and other infrastructure. Please feel free to contact Stan Higgins directly or connect with other members of our team who help create First Foundation's collaboration, such as April and Gary. We look forward to the potential of working with you on your exciting projects.